So when I go to France, I go there for two reasons. The first one, which is to be with my adoptive mother, who's French and still lives there. I didn't really want to watch it to start with. I have a strange love affair with anything to do with adoption, as one might imagine, really. My story of going back to Seoul was not a particularly nice experience. Some adoptees are lucky to be able to meet their biological parents, but nonetheless, they have lived with that loss, that grief, and in terms of Korean, that han, that beginning, it's the French neo-colonialist coming in as she is, as I am actually. Okay. I'm Korean, but I am a French citizen. So my whiteness, when I went to Korea, my whiteness being part of a group of French white tourists, there was this kind of white arrogance about it. Oh, I am not going to sit like them. Law. I want to be seated at a table and I want my breakfast with my croissant and baguette. It's really weird that I felt emotional when she said, "But you're French." It's like, oh, gosh, I keep on forgetting I am French. And it took me a long time and many, many hours of psychotherapy, of Gestalt psychotherapy, to come to the conclusion that actually I am Korean. We come from the same orphanage. She was just born 10 years later than I was. And so we spoke about that journey of not knowing, not wanting to know, and then wanting to know, and then in her case, knowing and meeting her biological parents. And she said that was the most traumatic thing she ever did. When I was talking about Blade Runner, there is, an under sort of political dystopian current, which is, that the Korean political system has systematically discriminated against its women.
Against what, sorry?
And its women, against women.
Oh, yes. This is the Not So Korean podcast with Jay and Tim. I am Jason Verney.
And this is Timothy Ohm.
In this podcast series, we talk to one another and sometimes with special guests about what we know about Korea,
what we don't know about Korea,
what we want to know about Korea,
and occasionally what we don't want to know about Korea.
As you probably know, and as we always say, we usually record this live in UK's Koreatown itself. That's an area in and around New Malden. Yes, that's the largest Koreatown and Korean community in Europe. On this occasion, though, a conversation takes place via a video call, myself being in Asia and our special guest in the UK. And that guest is Aline Giordano, a Korean adoptee raised in France. In this two-part interview, we discuss the recently released and much acclaimed film by Davy Chou, Return to Seoul, a film revolving around a Korean adoptee from France but finding herself, perhaps in more ways than one, in South Korea. But we also branch off onto other topics such as Aline's work, visiting Korea for the first time, creativity, music and more. It's probably worth noting that the audio and the video quality is better on Aline's side rather than mine. I've tried to make it as audible as possible though. Part 2 will follow in episode 31 of the Not So Korean podcast. Thanks for watching or listening. So here we are. Would you first of all like to introduce yourself? We obviously know each other and we can get into that in a minute. But would you like to just introduce yourself and your background, etc.?
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. And thank you very much for inviting me to talk today. So my name is Aline Giordano. Professionally, I am a Gestalt coach and organizational consultant. Gestalt is one of those terms that's not easy to define, but really the Gestalt vision is that it comes from the psychological discipline, and that says, we are human beings, and as such, we are inseparable from our environment. Therefore, we are in a constant relationship with the environment, with others, with a situation, and therefore, the quality of our interactions and the quality of the interactions with others and with the environment impacts us in many ways. So this is really sort of one of the underpinnings of Gestalt. There are many more which I haven't got time to go into, and that's not really the whole point of us meeting and talking today. But let's say that I am a Gestalt coach, and as such, I combine the approach, the coaching approach, with creative writing as a method. So with my clients, we explore new ways to tap into their creativity. Most of my clients, or I would say all of my clients, are creative people, whether they're artists, whether they're therapists, business owners, researchers. They are all, share that common ground, which is the creative process. So we use that creative process in order to develop a different relationship to their work, to their environment, to others. And effectively, we're being creative about creativity. So that's one area that of my current professional life.
Yeah, I mean, what I like about you as a person is you've got these different strands, I mean, obviously one of them is that you're an adoptee, which we'll come into in a second, but that's what I mean is you've got all these other creative facets, I suppose. And so, yeah, that job is just, like you said, just maybe just one of them, one of the things that you can be known for.
Yes, that's right. Hopefully I will be known one day for being a writer as well, because I am a writer, not just an academic writer, but I am writing a book, but we can talk about that later as well. Yeah, and we've met. It's quite funny because you've got connections with two of my siblings. One is you've got some pictures behind, which we'll probably touch on later, of a very well-known band. So one of my sisters is a big fan, as are you, and also my sister, my other sibling, let's say, we met because of her, through her. So it's kind of funny. There's a triangle of Verney-ness with. Yeah, I worked with one of your siblings. I was co-worker. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah, I didn't know how deep to go into that. But yes, so we're going to talk about, amongst other things, we're going to talk about Return to Seoul, or to give it its French title. Maybe you can pronounce it better than me. You've got no excuse. Indeed, Retour à Seoul. Yes, and I will say, first of all, you've got an advantage over me. First of all, you saw it very recently. I saw it back in October in Busan International Film Festival. I met the director, and I say actress, but she's not an actress, but she's an artist, but she acted. You read up on the film before you went to see it. Completely understandable. I think maybe I saw the trailer. You're French. You're an adoptee. I'm just remembering my notes, actually, because I was thinking about this earlier. You're French. I'm Korean. Yes, you're Korean French, which is really, and also I was thinking about this. It probably resonates to you. I'm thinking it does. I don't know. More than something like Broker. Did you see Broker? No. Yes, I did. Oh, this is really. It's very different. a weird story. I went, I think in France we are more in love with world cinema as a nation, and therefore and especially Korean cinema. So when I go to France, I go there for two reasons. The first one, which is to be with my adoptive mother, who's French and still lives there. I am now based in the UK. And the other thing is I go and watch lots of movies at cinemas. And I did watch this movie, although I have to say I fell asleep in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so when you fall asleep in the middle of it, then towards the end, I didn't quite understand the end. So I was keeping that story secret and thought, I need to revisit that movie.
Yeah. Well, I saw that at Busan as well, and personally, I like his films, but personally, it was because of the serious subject. I was trying to take it seriously, but of course, the film doesn't go that way. So for me, Return to Seoul, and just the way Return to Seoul is made in general, just touched me. And I'm never going to be someone who's personally affected by it, like yourself. Or can be personally affected. You'll tell me if you were, I suppose, when we speak about it. So you got an advantage. You saw it. How was first of all, how was the screening you went to? Did you go to like a Curzon, or did you go to an Odeon, or what was it you went to in the UK? I don't know.
I went to Picture House Cinema.
Oh yeah.
It's really strange because it completely went off my radar. I was not aware of the movie. I knew you had mentioned it last year, said, Aline, you might be interested in that when it comes out. I knew it'd been at the Cannes Film Festival, Un Certain Regard. And yet when it came to my home city, completely nearly missed it. But it's a few friends who mentioned it and said, there's a few things I didn't quite understand about the movie. And I thought I felt obliged to help my friends. I felt obliged to watch it because I didn't really want to watch it to start with. I have a strange love affair with anything to do with adoption, as one might imagine, really. Stories of adoptees, I don't really want to read them, but this movie really what I thought was amazing, really good.
Okay, that's good. But what I was going to say was, I guess anyone could show you something artistic to do with adoption, and you could just be shrug it off, say, well, it will never be anything like being an adoptee, so I'm not going to go and see it. Like they're never going to tune into my feelings or the diaspora. They're never going to, unless it's someone like you who do it, another adoptee maybe.
But you see, I think this is beyond, this is obviously about a part of my life story, Korean-born French adoptee, now having to deal with being in this world like that. And also the story of going back to Seoul. My story of going back to Seoul was not a particularly nice experience. And yet it's a complex lived experience, as one might imagine. But for me, this movie is also beyond that. It's a story of difference. It's a story of humanness, of how people, given their circumstances, cultural, socio-political circumstances, mean that they are who they are. It's about being and existence. It's an existential movie. And there are lots of different references which I picked up, which I could be completely not on cue, but the just like things like the Blade Runner jacket, for example, really got me to think really about a kind of dystopian society, and the way that we're subculture of adoption and stuff like that. So it was really broad ranging, highly cultured movie.
Yeah, so I guess that was unintentional. It's just one of those things that you thought about. It's a bit like when I used to go into films
I just still write film reviews, but I used to, take off little quirky things that nobody else would probably think of, but you just did, because it's Blade Runner, it's dystopian, and so is being separated and alone, maybe. I'm not sure if that's the right.
Well, there is definitely a sense of aloneness. There's a sense of aloneness following abandonment. That's for sure. This is something that we have to live with. Some adoptees are lucky to be able to meet their biological parents, but nonetheless, they have lived with that loss, that grief. And in terms of Korean, that han, that collects grief and pain and sorrow and generational pain all their life. And it's never going to be, they're never going to feel complete because it wasn't there. You cannot, as she says, as Freddy in the movie says, you kind of abandoned me. And then all of a sudden you expect me to be Korean, a good little Korean girl or something like that she says, it's impossible. So it really touched upon beyond, it's really about loss and grief and just existence and how one is in the world given one's circumstances.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that was in the part of the film where the mother, they say, why didn't we all go to Seoul together? Was it that point, or was it another point in the film? I don't know, but it was.
She sort of FaceTimes her adoptive mother in France.
Oh, yeah.
This conversation, and the mother says, we always said we would go together. And I have to say that's one of the movies, the part of the movie that where I felt quite emotional.
Yeah. I loved it. Just to go to a bit more, let's say, less heavy moment, the film itself and the opening. I actually think I might have missed the first opening, the very opening. I came in from another film that I didn't want to see. It might have been Hong Sang-soo or something. And then I came into Return to Seoul and I thought, well, let's hope this is great or something. And I think it was in the scene where they're talking in the cafe at the beginning, or the bar, sorry, having soju. But not long after that, she breaks into one of the dances. And I thought already, it was in that scene, wasn't it? That first, am I misremembering? But it was in that first scene that she pretty much does that first dance. Not to give it away for anyone who hasn't seen it.
The dance scene is further down. I think,
I'm thinking of another thing, yeah.
What you missed is the beginning when she arrives at the hotel and meets the Korean woman who would then become a friend.
No, I thought I saw that. Oh, I don't know.
So that you pretty much watch it from the beginning, and the hotel receptionist listens to this lovely Korean 1960s pop song.
Yeah.
And Freddy, the Korean-born French adoptee, the main protagonist of the movie, says, "Am I here?" And so I think straight from the beginning, Davy Chou, the director, makes a big statement around music. For me, it's like, pay attention. Music is going to be an important underpinning to this movie and really give us some clues as to where we're at, which for me was like, whoa, absolutely, music to my ear.
And I might be borrowing from some other recent reviews that I've read and seen, but reading those reviews or listening to Mark Kermo did a review. I like his reviews, and he was saying that I remembered the father wants her to hear the music, and that moment is not very long, but it's very touching, and the music is very fitting for the film. And it's just something, again, music plays a big part, even if it's the family or the dancing or memories. And memories. I
have to say, I know we're sort of going from beginning to middle or whatever. I was sort of jumping all around here, but that bit, so they're having problems communicating, obviously, because Freddy doesn't speak Korean. she needs to rely on her new friend to translate from French into Korean. And actually, I'd like to say at this point that it is a very complex movie, rightly so. But you hear, you feel, you sense that complexity through the process of translating. You know, the Italians have got this wonderful phrase, which is traduttore traditore, which is translator traitor. You can only, you will not give 100% of the intention of the first language into the translated language. But what this Korean woman does is she actually does not translate what Freddy wants her to translate. And what's really beautiful about this is that it's left to our imagination why she doesn't translate. Is it to protect Freddy? Is it to protect the father? Is it because of Korean custom, Korean cultural customs that prevents her from actually telling the truth, or from, you know, telling the elders something? Is there some code that we're unaware of? All of that really makes all the unsaid and unshown really brings a brand new level of complexity and richness about this movie, which is fantastic. So going back to that scene where the father really wants to communicate, and I agree with you, the review by Mark Kermode is beautiful, really. And he mentions that when the father shows his daughter a little video of him playing the piano, and that's the scene that I didn't understand, because from then her and her boyfriend are being sort of pushed into a taxi, and off they go. So the narrative behind that, I didn't understand it. But I think, you know, something that we do in Gestalt is, you know, we take cues from the environment, from the field, what is happening there. It's not the storyline here for me that grabbed me, but how I was left to feel. And I felt incomprehension. I didn't understand what was going on. And I think for me, whether it was meant to be like that, intentional or not, this is a really great way of impacting me, the viewer. It's like, I don't get it, he doesn't get it, she doesn't get it. And actually, as an adoptee, I don't get it. I don't get what happened to me.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's interesting. But I wonder if also the time, it jumps time throughout the film, and I wonder if it parallels in some weird way, you know, moments of your life where you felt comfortable, where you haven't felt comfortable, where you've suddenly been driven to go back to your birth country, or you haven't. Like, you go through decades of not, and I wonder if, not intentionally by Davy, but just, I wonder if that did parallel, you know, because I don't know what you go through. There's different parts in an adoptee's life of discovering, isn't there? First of all, you're unaware, then you're aware, then you don't want to know, then you do want to know. I'm guessing, because we've got other adoptee friends, haven't we? And I just wondered, maybe it has nothing. Maybe again, it's just me thinking that it's a strange parallel, but
I agree with you. You know, we go through all these phases, sometimes sequentially, sometimes completely chaotic. You know, the agent of chaos. I've heard that, and I've seen that written in terms of, you know, reviews for the movie. This is how even Davy Chou describes Freddy as an agent of chaos. There's contradictions, there's complexities, there's subjectivity, there's being silenced by language, silenced by the culture. You know, the very beginning, it's the French neo-colonialist coming in as she is, as I am actually. You know, I'm Korean, but I am French citizen. So my whiteness, when I went to Korea, my whiteness, being part of a group of French white tourists, I was French tourist, just not white. But because I was part of their group, there was this kind of white arrogance about it. Oh, I am not going to sit like them, low. I want to be seated at a table, and I want my breakfast with my croissant and baguette.
Yeah.
As for me, I was really hungry for what would I be eating if I'd stayed in this country, if I'd stayed in my native country.
Yeah.
So Freddy, when at the beginning of the movie, when they're in that restaurant, and then there's this cultural custom around who pours soju, she's being quite arrogant about it. Actually, she tramples on the custom. So, it's insulting. Well, let's be insulting. And she is, in a way.
Yes,
so
I remember that.
This is her being French, as me being French, going back to Seoul. So I can definitely relate to that.
Mm.
And then the character sort of unfolds, and her life story, and her wrestling with her emotions, and therefore her behaviors towards others, and towards her situation, towards her cultural context. It really is, for me, it's a Gestalt portrayal, really, of the adoptee. So it's really wonderful. Gestalt is really sort of a way of being in the world, of being relational towards others and the world. So that was a really great way of looking at myself through the eyes of an other who's like me, and yet is still other.
It's not. Yeah, I mean, it's probably not surprising that you, without going into your personal life too much, but you are quite a mindful person, that you've gone down that you do this work, because it sounds like it's quite fitting, because you have to, I don't know what to say, really. You're kind of dealing with the way people act or thoughts and things, from what I understand about your job role, yeah. And also, just touching on the food, it couldn't be any different from, a country that France, of course, has got loads of cuisine, but it's very bread orientated, like you said, croissant, to a country that's Asian. So we're not going from, you're not an adoptee from a neighboring country like Germany. The food couldn't be any more different. It's kind of something we're thinking about. But one other thing I was going to say was, because you reside in a different country to neither of those two, Korea and I wonder if in the film there was also parts of that, because you're already an adoptee in France, but then you move to another country and you maybe feel alienated or stranger, or double maybe. And I wonder if there was anything similarities in the film because of that, or did it not really come up? Maybe that's looking too much.
No, it's a fair question, Jason. It's a very fair question. I don't think that I had so many other thoughts and emotions and feelings sort of pouring ever since I've seen the movie, which was 5 days ago, that whilst the question came, I thought, not sure, not a priority at the moment, not a priority.
Yeah, of course, there's too much other stuff.
But interestingly enough, the topic of citizenship and birth rights and all of those things, the very beginning of the movie, when Freddy comes to the hotel, and then she hands over her passport, and the woman says in French, "Mais vous êtes française," so you're French. Very early on in the movie, I felt, I really felt emotion straight away.
Yeah.
It's really weird that I felt emotional when she said, "But you're French." It's like, oh, gosh, I keep on forgetting I am French.
Oh, yes. Okay.
And then later on, because they then become friends, later on she says, what does she say? But you're a little bit French as well. I wrote it down somewhere. Oh, t'es aussi un peu coréenne, she says, which they translate in, you're also part Korean. And that's where I felt that, and you know, the movie is based on the true experience of Davy Chou's friend, what's her name, Laure Badoufle, who is a Korean-born French adoptee. But I felt that they could have challenged that a little bit and sort of chewed on it a little bit longer, because that felt jarring to me. I'm not a little bit Korean also. I'm actually fully Korean. And that's the problem. I am Korean.
Yeah.
And I am a French citizen who grew up in France. And now, to make things even more complicated, or indeed complex, I've been living in the UK since 1994, living and working in the UK since 1994. But
Exactly.
with that business of, no, I am fully Korean. And it took me a long time and many, many hours of psychotherapy, of Gestalt psychotherapy, to come to the conclusion that actually I am Korean.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know if you read that wonderful book, Minor Feelings, by American Korean author Kathy Park Hong.
I haven't.
Absolutely recommend it.
Okay, I'll get the details after.
Whoa, I am Korean.
Mm.
But I grew up in a different culture.
Well, I met someone not that long ago who was an adoptee. Well, yeah, she's French, but Vietnamese French. But she's more French than she'll ever be Vietnamese, even though she looks Vietnamese. But she always says, again, it's not an adoptee in the same way the Korean adoptees, but she. Oh, hang on, maybe with her it's. But either way, she's Vietnamese French. So what I mean is, even though she looks that, she'll always say she's French. It's just that, you know, her history, what's the word? Ethnicity is, you know, Vietnamese, or her, you know, her looks and her blood, but she'll always say she's French. Interesting, like I mentioned earlier, we've got some friends that are adoptees, and actually, bizarrely enough, well, I don't know if it's bizarre or not, but probably that they are females. I mean, that's another thing, but that's we've, you know, I wonder how they. Have you spoken to any of those, like Bella or no, who is it?
No, but I have spoken to exactly the same as me, Korean born, put in an orphanage in Seoul. Actually, we come from the same orphanage. She was just born 10 years later than I was. And so we spoke about that journey of not knowing, not wanting to know, and then wanting to know, and then in her case, knowing and meeting her biological parents. And she said that was the most traumatic thing she ever did. So yeah, there is definitely some. And I would say usually I have met female adoptees. And I wouldn't want to make a generalization. Actually, I am not. I need to make it clear. I'm not generalizing anything here. It's really about my lived experience as an adoptee, watching this wonderful movie, and the sort of the thoughts I've had, and the feelings I've been wrestling with ever since. But that for me, I've always, you know, when I was talking about Blade Runner, there is, an under sort of political dystopian current, which is, that the Korean political system has systematically discriminated against its women.
Against what? Sorry.
And it's women, against women.
Oh, yes. Oh God. Well, it is by many factors. It still is. But now that makes me think, because I think when the adoptee thing happened, there was a thing about the males being more important. Of course, unfortunately, they were more, because it's Korea and other Asian countries similar, the male was more important, So maybe that's why more females were taken overseas or sent overseas, or whichever way you want to look at it. So how did you feel? Okay, so we're like you said, we're already going all over the place, but I just want to know, we might as well just keep doing that. Yeah. But how did you feel like I know there was moments where you were emotional and up and down throughout the film, probably more down, I don't know. But how did you feel overall when it was completed, when it was finished? Can you remember what your thoughts were? It was just a combination of all the different feelings. What was it?
I think I felt I'd been taken on a journey, a sort of exploration of self, but really gentle one. When they give you little sort of ideas and bits of experience, which you're then going to take away with you and sort of chew on. I felt pretty good. I mean, there are some movies, at the end of it, you don't want to be leaving the theater because you're weeping still. I was pretty good, actually. I felt really strong, and I think it was more of a case of yes, this works. This is a really genuine, authentic story, intelligently done.
Yeah.
Where we follow this character, we follow this protagonist who's wrestling with herself. She's going to meet her biological father. She's meeting him. It's like, what's going on? By the way, the one thing that I felt was that they used a little bit of sort of artistic, how do you say that?
License. Artistic license. Poetic. No, yeah, artistic license, poetic justice. No, anyway.
when she goes in, she's in Seoul, and she's been asked, so are you going to look for your biological parents? She goes, no way, no. And then a couple of days later, she meets her father, and I thought that was a little bit sort of fast. It's probably me projecting some sort of frustration myself, because when I requested my adoption file, I had to complete some very long and stupid forms and show this and prove that and whatever, where she just turns up in the movie with, this is a photograph, and then the woman presents her with her file. So, but you've got 2 hours, so they probably thought, okay, we need to save time.
Or maybe it was a part of the real story. Maybe when the original woman had said it to Davy, or the friend said, that was relatively simple. Maybe they thought, well, actually, let's leave that nightmare part, out in the paperwork part. I might be wrong. I don't really know.
Yes, although they did do interview a lot of Korean-born French adoptees, at least for the casting. So they've heard a lot of stories. They could have done their research. So maybe it's an oversight, maybe it's a true creative license, or maybe it is indeed so easy to get the files from this particular adoption agency. Mine is a different one, so maybe mine caught up with GDPR and it's not files so easily. I don't know.
Yeah, but another thing in the film, and I think I asked the director after I saw the film, I don't know if you saw on my Instagram recently, I put some selfies from the film. It was like 6 months ago, but I've got a backlog of people I met in Korea and elsewhere. But you know, I thought one part was contrived, but it wasn't. The part about the nuclear weapons, you know, the dealing, and that was all true. And I thought that was made up. Because I thought, when I watched it, I thought, oh, this is a bit far-fetched. But when they spoke to me, when I spoke to them afterwards, they said, oh no, that was true. And I was shocked, because I was actually satisfied when they told me that, because I thought that was the one niggling thing I didn't like, you know. But when they suddenly say that, and it was interesting as well, and something I can relate to was my film Reparation, which, have I even sent you a link to that or not?
I think I watched it, yes, and I enjoyed it.
Okay, because I couldn't remember if I did, but because there's a part, right, what happened was, as you probably watched many interviews to do with it, Park Jimin, she had a lot to say in the script about this wouldn't happen. He had a very, you know, he's a male, he had, you know, he doesn't know what's going through his head. And it was really good that she played a part in that. Of course, she's not an adoptee, but from a female perspective, and I can relate to it, because when I was auditioning people for my film, the first person, well, I went through an actress who we didn't work with in the end, but she had some fair points. And then later on, with the actress, one of the actresses who was involved, we cut out a couple of lines, because again, from my point of view, they weren't racist, they weren't stereotypical, but they were maybe making light of something when you wouldn't. But they weren't to do with, from what I understand, was from how he'd written how she would dress, things like that. It was a bit too feminine, or a bit too, the stuff she'd been through in her life, she wouldn't be wearing this, or there was other stuff in the dialogue. So I found that really interesting, and, you know, it's a real collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, because of course he's got some knowledge of being, you know, not from your country. So he's not an adoptee, but he's already got a head start in the fact that he does know what it's like to have two, what's the word?
Identities.
Yeah, get that again. Two countries, you know, in your.
And I know that to be othered at an early age because he looked different.
Oh yeah, that's a big part.
Is he Cambodian? Is that right?
Yeah, he's Cambodian born but French, and I think when he went back to his country to do a documentary that was to do with Cambodia, he wasn't. He said he wasn't looking. He wasn't doing soul searching. He wasn't doing something personal. But then he realised, oh, actually it is, because it suddenly got to him that, you know. Now I think he resides a lot of the time in Cambodia.
Yeah, he is based now there. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's a child now, and I think he lives there.
Yeah. I mean, you've probably done a lot more reading and interview watching than I have, because I've you know, it's funny how it's suddenly become, because it's being released in the UK by movie and the cinemas, it's obviously, it all starts coming back to me, and you start going, oh yeah, it was brilliant, that bit. It's, you know, it's not being overhyped at all, it's just being spoken about. And I'm not even, by the way, as you know, I'm not in my country right now. I'm in Thailand at the moment. So all these different things are happening. I'm oblivious to what's going on in UK cinemas and Thai cinemas. Yeah.
There is something though that I'm curious about, and I've asked myself the question, and I have no answer to that question. But I think it is a question that is important to ask. You know, when you talk about Park Ji-min, so the actress who plays the character Freddie, that she, for 3 months or something like that, she actually challenged Davy Chou. She wouldn't dress like this, she wouldn't say that, you know, and so on and so forth. And you know, she's then obviously talking about the male gaze, you know, that he had on this female character.
Yes.
And I thought this is a white narrative of the Asian adoption problem? Because
probably is, yeah, overall.
Because we are Korean-born, French adoptee, Swedish adoptee, Australian adoptee, whatever it is, So we end up in a culture that is known to be the dominant culture, the white culture. So Davy Chou is Cambodian. He emigrated with his parents, and therefore he also emigrated to France because of the political situation in Cambodia.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he grew up as a French, within a French environment, like I did. He probably has French nationality, I expect, also. So I'm wondering how much of a white narrative that is, or an Asian narrative.
Yeah, that's a good question. But I also wonder if he was, a lot of films come from Hollywood, and I wondered if he was a Cambodian American or American Cambodian, whether it would be even more white. And part of the reason I say that is because there are, like you said about world cinema in France. I guess what I'm saying is maybe being from France makes you more, not less white, just because of that, but maybe more worldly film-wise. Whereas Hollywood films are, it's all about themselves. It's all about, there's hundreds of thousands of adoptees there, but I'm just saying, yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I'm not saying it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about what even it would mean, what it would be like to have that Asian gaze of, basically to have our wounded, the wounded.
Do you mean a male Asian gaze?
No, the Asian gaze of the adoptee. Of the abandoned, rather than the white adoptee that we have become,
Yeah, and I have to say, from my point of view, I do have, maybe I hate to say it, I haven't got, even the word male gaze is a more modern term. When I was growing up, I never heard the word male gaze, but that's because a lot's changed in sexual, how things should be, not how they not objectification and all that kind of stuff. I guess what I'm saying is, if you were Caucasian, an adoptee from a different country other than Asia, I don't know if I would. Well, it's difficult to say because I got into Asian cinema. So first, I don't know if it does maybe make me feel more sympathetic, but not because you are Asian, because I know about Korean history, but maybe the male gaze can also relate to, Asian women. This might be what you were saying, Asian women being, the ones, they're so, what word did you just use? Like abandoned, like people seem to think that they're all so sweet, or they're also which they wouldn't do for a white woman. Is that what you're saying?
Which is the Korean name of Freddy in the movie, which translates into docile and joyous.
Yes, I heard about that. I read that.
Yes, this is what Korean or Asian women are stereotyped into, that they're docile and should be joyful.
Well, it can be that they are docile and joyful, but they're never hard. Like in a characterization, it's rare they're the dominant one.
Yes, and that is exactly the point of this movie, is that Eddie is shown as that as well. You know, the complexity of the character is that she can just like shut down like that, be joyful, be fun or whatever, and then, you know, she can just like cut you. That's it, cut you off. And there are scenes like that with her boyfriend in the car, when they come back to Seoul a few years later, and that sort of instant switch is actually interesting in that character, and that's probably what Mark Kermode speaks about when he talks about the complexity of the character, and that the Park Ji-min, who's not a trained actress, is doing an incredible job because of the depth of the character.
And then she mentioned in an interview that because it was, it was, I think it was like 30 days shoot, which is quite normal for an independent film sometimes, that there was a lot of, you know, she had to just be 1 minute even though she's not an actress, she had to change her moods so much. But maybe she said something like, maybe that helped because it was a short amount of time. And then she was kind of being, right, I'm into this mode now. If she was just this happy character that wasn't going through any darkness, you know, I mean, yeah. And I will say as well, just going, I've mentioned to you before, but I've got 1 or 2 fiction ideas that relate to adoptee stuff. I know my reparation one does touch on it, but it doesn't elaborate on it. Partly I always worry because I'm not at liberty to, you know, talk about, I'm not knowledgeable, but who is this like filmmaker or artist who wants to comment on it? Yeah. And then I might be called looking at it from a white filmmaker's point of view, you know, of a female. So I just sort of throw that in there because we've talked about this stuff before in some other collaborations.
Then you would collaborate with adoptees, with female adoptees, like Davy Chou did.
I would at least ask opinions of people, for example, yourself. But I would obviously, you know, it would all be written first, and then I would say, is this all right? Is this all right? Is this not all right? You know, I mean, I even had to do that with the language in reparation, to dual language, you know, so you've always got to do something. You want to be authentic, you know, and you probably know that. You know that from the stuff you do. And so was there a moment in the film where, was it when you ever thought, oh, this could have been better with a Cure song over it? No, there's nothing like that, because I know that that's probably quite prominent in your mind, more than being a French adoptee, a Korean adoptee in England.
That's a great question, a really great question. And you know, actually, no, the score is absolutely superb.
Thanks for watching or listening. Part 2 will follow in episode 31 of the Not So Korean podcast. 안녕히 계세요.